Hello, everyone.
Hey everybody,
We're back.
we are.
Back again.
It's the Mateo and Steph show.
Yeah, we've replaced Steven.
Steven, Stephen,
Yeah.
me.
Yes, exactly.
Same.
It's Steven's turn to be sick this week. So, yeah, it's been a while since we did a stream together.
That's true. It has been like months.
Yeah. Pretty long time.
Yeah, but this is going to be fun. And I know Steven's going to be chatting in the chat.
Oh, for sure.
Chat works even if you have laryngitis.
Believe it or not, it does.
Yeah, I am definitely the sidekick. I want a cape.
Okay, sure.
We can print one, right?
Maybe, yeah. Yeah, so we have actually pretty cool stuff to go over this week. We're going to be talking about the Quinly Pro Beta, and I know we already did 2 full live streams on all the features and discussing how it might look, but now we have a pretty defined feature set that we're going to go through, what you can expect, and also how the beta is going to work, and yeah, all the cool stuff that you can expect to be in Quinly Pro. So we should probably say hi to everyone.
Yep. Hello, Kevin.
Kevin, Mateo.
Steven,
hopefully not from the other side. You're not that sick.
Henry's truly from the other side.
Henry's from the other side of the pond, as they say. Yeah, it's great to see everyone. This is going to be pretty cool, I think.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to this beta. We've been wanting to do this for so long.
Yeah, literally for like
3 years.
3 years. Even longer.
Even longer. This is true.
Yeah.
So pretty exciting.
Yeah, but so for anyone that doesn't know, Quinly Pro is like the actual farm management version of Quinly. And this is something that when we started developing automation for printers, a couple of years ago, this is actually what we started with. So it's nice to finally be back to doing what we like to be doing, I guess. And so the idea is that, Quinly will run one printer automatically 24/7 without you having to touch it. And what we're doing with Quinly Pro is you can take a bunch of previously individual Quinlys and they can start talking to each other and work together to figure out how to get your orders done.
Yeah, really, I was talking to someone the other day and they were saying, so Quinly is kind of like you as a printer operator, and then Quinly Pro is you as a farm manager.
Yeah.
And I said, exactly, because it's not just, the Pro isn't just taking a bunch of printers and running them in one place. It's running them as a farm.
Mm-hmm.
And that's pretty exciting. Some of the analytics, and you guys know I'm a bit of a finance geek. I love the analytics stuff that we're going to be putting in, and I think that's going to help people with farms scale up even faster, because they're going to find out exactly where they should be spending their time and how to maximize productivity and efficiency.
Yeah.
And I think
that's going to be interesting.
That's going to be interesting.
From like all the customers we talk to, there's, especially after they start using Quinly, they start to realize all the blind spots that they had previously.
Absolutely.
Because I feel like, Stephen likes to say there's all these micro tasks and you can easily get overwhelmed with just trying to keep things running. But once they start to experience automation a little bit, they start to see, oh, there are all these blind spots where I was actually spending way too much time I shouldn't have. And with Quinly Pro, we hope to automatically connect and collect and present that data to people so that you will have a dashboard that says, hey, you printed like 5 times more than you usually would in this time period.
Exactly. Like, or it can tattle on certain areas of the farm. Hey, those printers over there didn't do it.
They're slacking.
They're slacking.
Yeah.
Actually, I was talking to a farm operator from the Midwest the other day. It's got over 70 printers. And we were talking about all the little things on the farm.
Yeah.
And I said, oh, it's like death by 1,000 cuts. And he said, pretty much. So it can get pretty overwhelming. So, hey, Pat. Yeah, it's going to go well on your farm.
Yeah. Steven said micro tasks with 20 sad faces.
Yes, exactly. And I know Henry totally understands, even though he's just starting his farm, just all the little bits and pieces already.
Yeah, maybe it'd be a good question for chat. As you started getting more than one printer, or even if as you started using your single printer more heavily, what are some things you started to realize about using printers and some of the limitations maybe? Because there's a lot of stuff you will realize and have to work around, but then I find that a lot of people get to the point where they just accept those workarounds as being
Normal.
that's it. Yeah, and then you end up like
you almost don't recognize how much time it's taking
yeah.
until you're not spending that time anymore, and then it's kind of like, oh, what? I have extra time.
Yeah, it's like when I do testing for new Quinly images, I just send 15 prints to my printer like it's nothing. And I went into the basement for the first time in a couple days, and there's just parts all over my table. And I never actually thought about, oh my God, I'm creating a huge mess down here, like printing dozens and dozens of parts, testing our software, because it's like no longer even a consideration at this point.
Exactly. Hey, to 3D by JB, how are you? And Pat's saying he sold out. They sold out last weekend. They need more Quinlys. But Pat, really, did you think that filament changes were going to be your biggest headache? I mean, you could only wish.
Yeah. Filament changes do.
It does though, especially if you do a combination of printing faster and automated, you really go through filament.
You have to change it really often.
Especially if you're going to do Steven's trick of 250 millimeters a second.
Yeah. There was actually someone in our Discord that said they took down one of their parts that was 2.5 hours to like 26 minutes.
I saw that.
That's
just
crazy.
Using Steven's
the profile.
Yeah.
I clean a bed in about 30 seconds. I average 3 prints per printer per day. That's 57 minutes a day I'm spending. Yeah, that's like a lot. And I'm
Should I go in the chat?
Yeah. Oh, it looks like we are back.
Looks like it. All right.
Okay, weird. I don't think we actually got cut off too much, so we can just continue.
People will find out later.
Yeah, people will find out later. Cool. Okay, we can keep going.
All right. So, yeah, I mean, all this to say the farm automation is super cool.
Yeah.
And we definitely have to figure out that filament issue.
Well, Pat says he needs 10 kilo spools, which I think is the correct solution pretty much.
Yeah, I think so. Oh, we were gone for, yeah.
Okay. Nice.
That's
Not
what
too
we
bad.
kind of thought, yeah. We just, yeah, Pat, we have to have some sort of an IV for
For printers?
printers. I mean, it's almost an IV already, so, you know.
Pellet extruders?
Giant pellet extruder
Yeah,
in the
pretty
middle
much.
of the room, and then
I've seen stuff like that. Maybe that's the future. Yeah, so why don't we get into actually what this looks like? And then yeah, we'll just go through the features.
Yeah, take any questions and stuff. So
Yeah.
I think for anybody who hasn't been in on the betas before, maybe get an idea of what the 3DQ beta experience is all about.
Sure. I guess it's basically you get software that we test it before we send it to you. But the interesting thing about a beta is because we work with so many different printers and people have different workloads. The idea is that with these betas, we have our tested pieces of software, we send them out, and then you just use it as you would for your farm. You wouldn't do anything special with it.
Yeah.
You would just print like you normally would, and then we would see, are there any bugs with how it's being used, or are there any workflow improvements that we might have missed that makes sense for the type of thing that you're printing. And so it's very iterative, and the good thing about that is that you get to give feedback every single step of the way. If anyone is in the multi-printer hub beta right now, they would know like pretty much we're constantly asking questions and getting on calls with people to figure out how things can be improved or if they're experiencing any issues. And then what the other thing that we do is it's pretty gradual. So we start with base features and then slowly start adding more and more features, because with something like a print farm, every feature you add like adds so much complexity because there's so many different interactions going on that you have to account for.
Yeah.
And people have different farms and they print different things.
And some people have different printers on their farm.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like it gets pretty crazy really fast. So
one thing at a time.
Yeah.
I really believe in that. And I find I get to do the overflow support when you guys are sleeping.
Yeah.
And I find it's really interesting to hear what people are running into, questions they have. I mean, I can't do the technical stuff that you and Max and Steven do, but
you still see it.
I see it. And what I'm really excited about with this one is all the business impacts, because this becomes, this really takes it up to a whole different level.
Yeah, it's like farm management is now more about like scheduling your production or doing manufacturing than it is about running a printer. And so the features that we'll go over do end up having more impact on like business operation than necessarily than on the printer itself. I guess one of the ones that we're looking at maybe as a bit of a teaser is the ability to make or to connect Quinly Pro with things like Etsy or Shopify so you can import your order book. Like that has more to do with your 3D printing business than it does with the 3D printers themselves. But yeah, we'll talk about that more later. That's like the last feature on our list.
That gets very exciting though.
Yeah, it's really cool. It's kind of like the dream, right? Somebody submits an order and then it just gets printed and all you have to do is pack it basically.
Well, you get your email packing slip that says go to printer 117 and 14 and get the things for your order.
Yeah.
There you go. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, exactly.
So that's the kind of stuff you can expect for Quinly Pro Beta. Yeah, which part? I guess we should start here, huh?
I think we should start there. So I think just again, for anybody who's not familiar with our community, one of the great things I think about our community is everybody jumps in and is super experienced now with Quinly. It's been around for long enough that we're getting tens of thousands of hours a day printed on Quinly, so lots and lots of experience out there. But specifically on the beta, there's so much. I don't even know what to say. It's like everything builds on each other, and everybody kind of has these big aha moments. And
it was pretty funny actually. During the first kickoff call for the Multihub beta, people were already talking about and guessing features that we had planned like 4 weeks down the line. So it's like, but that's the kind of discussion that we have during these betas, because it does shape how features come out. And I guess going back to how we do it very incrementally, usually we start out the first couple weeks are just getting the foundational like technology working, and then once that's working, you can start building a lot of features on it really quickly. As we're starting to see with the Multihub beta.
Yeah, exactly. And it's all about getting the base right. To get the base right, then everything else is easy to add on.
Yeah.
And Pat's just saying Quinly Pro 2 V2 packs my prints. Well, funny enough, we saw at Form Next that packing system where it was on basically monorail, and Pat, it would send a box to your different printers essentially to pick up parts from the order. What we were thinking.
Montratec, was it?
Can't remember their name.
I think it was Montratec.
Yeah, it was really cool. But that's the type of thing, once we get compatibility, cross-platform compatibility, the world's your oyster.
Yeah, especially if there's like API access, then you can start building
pallet robots.
Oh, God.
Pat's already designed all of Quinly for the next 4 years.
Yeah. We can just hire him. Yeah, combined. Yeah, okay. They're all also talking about pellet extruders. So maybe you can use an API to tell which printer to load the pellets into or something with like a robot. I don't know.
Who knows
Who
where
knows?
printing can go in
Who
20
knows?
years? Like,
Yeah, who knows? I think if we open the API, people will go kind of nuts with it. So
which will be fun.
that'll be really interesting to see. Yeah. Um,
So I think maybe it would be good to talk about the multi-hub for people who aren't so familiar with it and why that's the first stage of the Pro.
okay.
Because we had decided a long time ago that before we did Pro, we really needed to get that multi-hub working.
Sure. Yeah. So the multi-printer hub is it's a feature in beta right now, and a lot of people in chat are actually in this beta where uh, due to well, I guess going back, we identified that the microchip shortage is really going to affect people's abilities to scale their print farms. And the reason for that is, you know, if you need one Pi for a printer, for example, that makes it really difficult to, you know, Pis are so expensive, it doesn't make sense to buy one for each printer, and it's really hard to get a hold of. So even if you did buy one, you you might not be able to buy one next week or when you get your next printer. Um, so before we started working on any sort of farm stuff, we wanted to make sure that people actually had the ability to grow into the farm software. And that's why we decided to do the multi-printer hub beta, which is just getting more than one printer connected to a single Pi. And once that's done, the next step is to get all of those Pis connected amongst each other. And then that's kind of what gives you Quinly Pro.
And maybe you want to talk about, we did that with Q Suite and QPod.
Yeah, so a long time ago, before Quinly was even a thing, we actually did network Pis together. We have that software already. That's how we ran our print farm and two other test farms. Was each printer had one Pi. It was still possible to get Pis at a reasonable price.
Yeah, easily.
Easily, yeah. Like we could just say, okay, we need 40, and they would send you 40. But yeah, so it was one Pi for each printer, and then all those Pis were networked together and controlled from a single interface. And that's how we ran our farm for a while. But since we switched to Quinly because of COVID, the other thing that happened because of COVID was the microcontroller or microchip shortage. And so we now realized that, you know, we have to get around the shortage somehow if people are going to expand their operation. So yeah, that's why we decided to start with the multi-hub beta. The nice thing is once that's working, we already have a lot of the code for just networking those hubs together. And that's why once we spent all this time testing it with our beta testers and making sure it works, it's going to be like a really quick rollout right into Pro. Yeah. So everyone who's in the multi-hub beta, like those features will then gets rolled into Pro and becomes part of that feature set as well. So again, it's like very like step by step by step, but it all starts building really, really quickly.
Yep. And I think one of the things that ends up being a challenge once you have a whole bunch of printers is keeping track of all those printers, which I know
Yes.
you talked a little bit about, well, actually quite a bit about on one of the streams, but I thought it would be interesting for people to know kind of how you're going to make that transition, because again, it's kind of a logical sequence. Now you've got multiple printers on a hub, and then you're going to connect the hubs, and then now you have to somehow have printers with facial recognition.
Facial recognition.
So we want facial recognition through Quinly, yeah.
It's like DNA testing almost.
Nozzle recognition.
Nozzle recognition. Something like that. Yeah, so one of the big things that actually a couple of our users told us about, and we experienced this on our farm too, is when you take printers offline or move them to different parts of your network, it's really difficult to keep track of things. And if we're building farm management software, it's important for us to, uh, be able to have reliable data coming from the same printer each time. So one of the big, I guess, features or innovations that we're doing with Pro is we haven't really decided on a name on it. It's like printer identification or hardware fingerprinting. Uh, we're not sure yet. I'd be curious to hear what people,
Maybe some brainstorming
yeah,
here.
what people might call it. But it's basically, um, there's a couple of things that we do, but it can basically ID your printer in such a way that no matter where you connect it or to which Quinly hub you connect it, or even if it's on a different network, but under your account, it will be able to recall that specific printer's history. And it does that by like, yeah, looking for unique features of the printer's hardware itself, uh, reading in the firmware and that kind of stuff. So basically, the point being that you can safely unplug machines and not worry about having to reset everything when you plug them back in. Like if you have in your software temperature offsets or Z offsets or certain speed limits, or even considering like saving EEPROM in the cloud. So if for some reason your EEPROM got reset, you could just flash it back. Again, the point being that when you take a printer down for maintenance and move it or plug it in somewhere else, none of its settings or history will be lost, no matter where you plug it in, as long as it's under the same account.
Well, that makes, again, back to the business side, that makes it possible to track for maintenance. It makes it possible for you to know how often you've had to take it offline for maintenance.
Exactly.
And
that's actually a really good point.
It's really important from an asset management perspective. And for those of you who, have any kind of background in asset management, one of the challenges, especially when you have portable assets like printers, is keeping track of, if I've got 100 or 500 of these things, where are they, and which ones are going in for maintenance, and which ones are more reliable, and
right,
all that type of thing. And so you need this identification to do it. As long as print farms are manual, people just kind of, I guess, put a sticky note on it.
Yeah, they put labels on their printer.
Exactly, and you just do it that way. But
I mean, that's what we did too. Like when we were manually keeping track of what printers do, we give our printers, we put names on them, and then we know like, oh, this printer tends to act up with high temperature filament. But that's all manually tracked, and as soon as you start, different people will know different things, and as soon as you start getting more printers, or more people running those printers, it becomes impossible to keep track of.
Exactly. Kevin is suggesting we call it the QID. I'm thinking the QID interface, the QIDI. Oh, wait a minute.
No,
I think that one's been taken.
QIDI's been taken.
Darn. So I think you guys are right. As soon as we get this working, so it's completely, device agnostic, pies will become super cheap.
Yeah.
But that's okay, supply chain resilience. What can we say?
Can you talk about how you would distinguish the hardware ID? I haven't been able to distinguish under three boards between one another. Yeah, and that's a really big problem. So there's a couple things. Some of them is you can write certain values into the firmware and use that. Some is you can use differences in the firmware itself. Right now there are three options that we're looking at. Because yeah, printers don't come flashed with unique firmware IDs. And their motherboards do not have unique IDs either. So it's a very tricky problem, but we've been working on it for the last week or so. And yeah, we have three solutions, and there's like a backup to each one. And we think that we can get pretty much 100% coverage on all the printers that Quinly can go on right now.
Yeah, which is pretty exciting.
Yeah.
I like Kevin's idea is pity. But I'm thinking, Kevin, how about Cupid?
Cupid?
Quinly Printer ID.
Oh, that's pretty good.
Because we love printers.
We love printers. But yeah, actually, Pat, here, taking it offline, replacing the nozzle, putting it back in, and it goes right to back to printing its own queue would be awesome. And that's
Yes,
exactly how it would work.
that's the objective.
Yeah, so that yeah, it can just be really hard to keep track of that manually.
Well, and Pat, eventually, of course, with an automated dispatch, you would want it to pick up from wherever the central queue is,
Yeah,
or its own queue if you need a dedicated queue. But that memory is really important.
yeah, it allows us to build a lot of analytics that were not possible before because it's just if you can't keep like if you ask somebody, oh, I don't know how many printers are. What am I trying to say? I'm trying to say like yeah, if it's very difficult if you ask somebody what a specific printer in their print farm how well it performs.
Yeah.
They'll have a general sense of it, but they don't have actual hard data for that one printer. That's what we're trying to solve with this because it can also mean that if you're taking your printer down for maintenance, taking a certain printer down for maintenance more often, we can now track that and tell you, this printer, it's been taken down like 10 times and we notice you're printing ABS on it more than other printers.
Exactly, because you're starting to track all the analytics.
Yeah.
And even if something, for instance, if you see a lot of disconnects or you see maybe if we're going to have a pi on each one, maybe it's the pi, maybe the SD card, but you can't tell if you don't have history. So,
yeah.
Hey, Al, welcome.
Nice to see Al. I'm sure Al will have some interesting ideas here too. So that's like the first feature, I guess, is this hardware ID, and it opens up a lot of doors for the other features we're going to talk about.
Yeah, absolutely. Whoops. It's 5 o'clock.
It's 5 o'clock. That means it's time to talk about the next feature.
It is.
So the other one that we talked about a little bit on one of the previous streams was something we're thinking about calling it dynamic slicing, but it's not really slicing. It's not reslicing your objects, but what it does is based on what printer something is being sent to, it will adjust certain print settings. So like the classic example is if you're printing a benchy in black PLA, you might want to have your fan on higher and your hot end at a hotter temperature than if you were printing with white PLA.
Yeah. Maybe it should be dynamic profiles.
Yeah, maybe something like dynamic profiles.
Dynamic profiling. Sounds like FBI or something.
Yeah. Sounds like a Jason Bourne.
Exactly.
But the idea being, yeah, you can slice one item, basically like a prototype for what you're trying to print, and then depending on what material it gets sent to, small adjustments will be made. And even depending on what specific printer it gets sent to, it can make adjustments too. So it could be just that, this printer has a different hot end than this printer, and the temperature offsets need to be a little bit different.
Yeah.
Or it could be as complicated as, setting different extrusion values. So like maybe a particular hot end does better at 105% extrusion. You don't want to have to reslice an entirely new version of all your items just to be able to print on that one printer. So you would have one set of items, and whenever Quinly would send it to that printer, it would apply that offset.
Yeah.
So there's no reslicing on your part, which is nice. If you make an update to that part, you don't have to reslice copies for each, unique material or unique printer ever again.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, so good points being made in the chat.
Mm-hmm.
You can't track what you don't measure. That's absolutely true. And this stuff is very tedious to track manually,
Mm-hmm.
which we all know because we've tried. with
Yeah,
our
it's
own
just
farm.
not, it's not worth it sometimes.
No, and it's kind of doubly not with us because we do so much prototyping and we're experimenting, of course, doing R&D and kind of purposely messing up our printers
Yeah,
sometimes. We printed a beautiful massive piece to fail and it didn't
it
fail.
did fail.
It did actually fail.
It
Kind of failed.
the printer failed,
The printer failed,
not the
yeah.
print. Yeah.
Uh,
This is a good, actually, I'd love to see the same level of tracking and data capture for Filament. So that's
yes,
kind of,
you read our mind.
yeah. The next part, conversely, you have like unique printer IDs. At the same time, we'll be looking at a material library of sorts. So you
Yeah.
can have offsets per material or offsets per printer. And the same thing would happen with materials where jobs in a particular filament will be tracked across your farm. And the fun part that we have to figure out is if there are problems happening, are they happening because of the printer it's printing on or because of the material you're using?
Yeah.
Um,
Well, and we know because we do so much support outside of the software that it's not just filament and printer hardware, it's network, it's
Yeah.
SD cards, it's pies,
it's like
it's slicing,
so much.
it's yeah, there are so many things because 3D printing is you know, it's deceptively simple. It seems like a simple thing, but it's got all the sciences working together.
Yeah,
You've got
so many
molten
different.
plastic and mechanics and
It's insane.
digital technologies. It's crazy. So being able to track all this, definitely. And I think the nice thing is as you get into tracking data across a farm, you can start using some of the smart analytics and have the farm kind of I was going to say smartly managed, but you know, more the predictive maintenance
Hmm.
and just subtler things that as humans we don't have time to focus on, especially if you got 70 or 100 printers. It's too
Yeah.
much to do in your head
Yeah.
because you also have a business to run. It's not the only thing you're doing. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
there's like some stuff that you can do with this, which would be very experimental, but you know, if you're trying to print something in a new material and it fails, um, you could try automatically printing it on a different machine, and then if it doesn't fail on that machine, you know it's like, okay, it's probably a hardware problem with the first machine. If it does fail on the other machine, then you know it's either a slicing or material issue. And then you can see like, did other objects in this material fail more often than usual? If yes, then it's a material issue. If no, then it's probably a slicing issue. And this is like all that stuff that is really painful to keep track of manually. And most of us do, maybe not on a super conscious level, but I think a lot of print operators are always thinking about this. But with Quinly Pro, because you'll have all that data, you'll be able to we'll be able to create like a nice interface for keeping track of that stuff and doing that tracking for you. Because I know for myself, you know, I remember when I was like manually using a machine and I was troubleshooting a certain G code to try and get it to work.
Yeah.
Like if it took me more than, you know, a day or 3 days to do it, I would forget some of the changes I had made.
Yep.
And then I wouldn't be sure, like, oh, was it the filament I was using that was bad, or was it this certain setting, or maybe the printer I was using, I switched printers and now suddenly everything's different. Um, it gets really hard to keep track of, but what we're going to do with the Quinly Pro Analytics is to try and track that stuff and give you insight. Hey, it's probably this printer, it's probably this filament, or you might need to change how you slice this particular part.
Yeah, hopefully getting smarter and smarter as it goes along. And Pat was saying it may be cool to have public info. Yeah, aggregate data, definitely something we want to talk to people about because obviously it's, you know, it's all just aggregate. You're not looking at what people are
Yeah, actual
specifically
production data.
doing. Yeah, but for filament in particular, and also components over time, I would love to know how hot ends compare, for example. Or to Pat's point, is Fuchsia Mini more durable than an Ender 3? People want to know as they're expanding, how much should I be spending? Is it worth the money? Am I getting an ROI? And that's what I say. This is all, to me, this is all driving the businesses forward in a much more cost-effective way. And you're going to know how much you're really losing per hour of downtime. Mm-hmm. You're going to know how much you're gaining in efficiency from reducing printing times. Because a lot of stuff we do right now in 3D printing is rule of thumb. And the problem with a rule of thumb is it's always based on an assumption of volume. So your rule of thumb is you have to do $6 an hour through your printers. But is that based on 100 hours a week, 50 hours a week, 168 hours a week, right? Like,
no one knows.
No one really knows. And, then people don't get the business results they expect because everything is being done on this sort of ad hoc proxy basis because it's too time consuming and not really cost effective to get the data.
Yeah.
So it's kind of chicken and egg. So this is where it should solve a lot of issues.
Yeah, I think on that specifically, like even without public info, even within your farm, if you are introducing a new filament, this would be able to tell you that it doesn't match up to your production history, like the yield rate is lower or something.
Exactly.
And then it will, you'll know, okay, something's going wrong.
And even when you get new operators or move to a new facility.
Yeah, that's true.
Or get someone else designing and slicing.
Yeah.
Or even for training in universities. You could literally use it as a grading system.
Yeah.
Okay, guys, you got this productivity, that's a straight up F. You guys can know.
Oh my God. That sounds like a nightmare.
Steven set the A+ number over here.
Yeah. Kind of, yeah. But yeah, it is. Like you could see if you change your process and suddenly your numbers start getting worse, you'll know that, it might correlate to that specific change.
Yeah.
But I do think that the idea of global, like aggregate data would be interesting.
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to filament brands, because we could see how successful people are with certain materials. We could even do fancier stuff like on average, do people print faster with certain materials, stuff like that.
Does white print faster than black?
Yeah.
Do you get more failures with metallic? Do you get better throughput with marble? I don't know.
Yeah, that would be really interesting.
It'd be really interesting.
I think it would help a lot of people as well when they're considering new filaments.
Yeah, exactly.
I'd be curious to hear people's thoughts on other interesting things that they think we could track that would help them run their print farms. Al says hours of prints, tracking number of prints, material usage. That will be important.
Definitely.
And then across the farm, if you compare per printer rates, that'll give you insight into how printers are performing.
Well, and even as you get bigger farms, depending on what type of products you're doing, you could do per customer, you can do per product line, you can do per, say you have little products and bigger products, or you have PLA and PETG, or you have whatever. You can start making some really specific decisions around how you price it, because it's not just do it or don't do it. Sometimes it doesn't really cost me the same to do this. Is something more cost effective to produce? Should I be changing my inputs or whatever?
Yeah.
So
because like a 10 or 20% failure rate might be acceptable, but as long as you price it accordingly into the parts that you're making.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And yeah, and part of the beta or pro is going to be to listen to you and decide which of these types of stats will be most important to work on first.
Yeah.
So there'll be a lot of...
I think we should just open bidding for stats. Bid for stats. It's just like an auction, a stats auction. Which ones do you want?
Which ones do you want?
We'll raffle them off.
Yeah, raffle them. That'd be funny.
So many, it's funny because when we talk about stats and analytics, it's quite interesting how many different things people have questions about depending on what they're printing.
Yeah.
Because there really is a lot of data in printing that can be super helpful.
I love this even to compare with other people who have the same printers or filaments so I can see if it's a me problem or a printer problem. That's true. I mean, that would that would that would be really insightful too, because I know I've spent like hours troubleshooting something that turned out not even to be my fault.
Hmm.
And that's really frustrating. Or yeah, that's always been really frustrating. Like I look online and I see like, oh, this filament just you can't print it very quickly. No one's been able to do it. And then I realized I wasted hours trying to get something to print faster than normal.
Yeah, exactly.
Print settings comparison by printer brand between users. That would be really complicated to do, but that would be like a long-term
But
goal, I think.
it would be very interesting to
Yeah.
do. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, users have been asked to send in their settings for different brands and types of filaments.
And actually, yeah, if people have filaments that they really like, we should actually send a note out to people to ask again because we have so many more people using so many different filaments. We haven't updated that page in a long
It
time.
might be interesting to have like within Quinly, because you can have these material profiles and offsets.
That's
Maybe
true.
within Quinly, like if you have a profile that's worked really well for you, you can make it public, and so other people could maybe download your Cura profile or something within the UI itself.
Of Quinly.
Yeah, and then we can also say like, you can trust Kevin. He's printed 1,000 things with this profile,
Yeah, exactly.
rather than just like profiles you find randomly online that may or may not blow up your printer.
Kind of like Fix My Print.
Yeah, you don't want those ones.
No.
Who has the most efficient farm competition? Yeah,
Ooh.
we have to be careful with any public data. You have to be really careful.
Yeah,
Don't.
but there's ways we could do that.
Yeah,
Just like
aggregating
grams per
stuff.
hour.
Yeah, grams per hour, like
That doesn't tell you anything.
grams per hour per printer or something.
Yeah, exactly. Printer grams per hour.
Everyone wants a competition.
Yeah, always fun to compete.
Seasonal offsets would be interesting too, because we noticed like
Oh, yes.
some
There's,
lots of changes depending on the season.
well, season and geographical.
Yeah,
Because our friends in Australia would have a very different view of the world
yeah, than we do.
than we do
Yeah,
at a certain time of year.
yeah,
But we know for sure we have people in different areas, different humidity levels and
yeah.
heat and all the rest of it.
So that's like the analytics, the material library, and then of course you can do dynamic slicing from that. But that's all the stuff that we want to figure out and test during this beta. And things like analytics will depend a lot on um, experienced printer users like you guys. So that's going to be very important. And that's also one of the things I'm looking forward to the most on working on in this beta. We kind of skipped over a couple of them. Digital warehouse. So the idea being that you have a central shared storage that propagates to every printer, even if the printer's on a different network.
Yeah.
Yeah, just so that if you make version updates, there's no chance that you'll accidentally print an older version of something, because that can be really sad.
Yeah. And the idea being with the sort of the digital warehouse idea being that you know over time these what I call digital molds really you really do need to track them the way you track molds because they are that valuable. So you need to know, you know, when were the files created, you know, where are they stored,
Mm-hmm.
what were they for, and it is version control, but that's a little simplistic when you start getting into, you know, dozens or hundreds of variations across hundreds of machines across
Yeah.
dozens of filament types, you know, and so on. So, yeah, I see it much more as a warehouse, thinking about where are you storing your orders, your jobs,
Yeah.
your files.
Everything,
Mm-hmm.
basically.
Because I think the idea with the folders is really to create a couple of different ways that you can store things now, because you can store just your G code files, obviously, but then you can sort them into jobs.
Hmm.
You can sort them into orders, especially if you have standard orders. There might be some folks, or even for your own purposes, where you go, yeah, I need this every Monday or whatever it is.
Yeah, it's a bit more comprehensive than the current folder system, and it will also what was the other big part of it? I guess the other big part of it is it's more meant to correspond to like orders you might get in your shop. So if you have a certain product that requires a couple different parts, it will be easier to send that specific. It becomes more of like a manufacturing order that you send, and that manufacturing order can have many different parts inside of it. Um, and in the digital warehouse, you're not just storing individual G codes, but you're storing G codes for that are kind of grouped based on product.
Yeah, exactly. And I think one of the big keys with all of this is that we're trying to take the tedious thinking out of the picture so that you can do the much more value added thinking
Hmm.
that is going to drive your business forward. Because a lot of this type of thing, organizing SD cards and, running around to printers and stuff, it sucks up your mental energy, and then you don't have that energy to apply to scaling your business.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Palisync, is that still planned to be hosted locally? Not if you want to sync between networks, you can't really, you can do it locally to some extent, but I think like, sorry, if you're going to hold all your files locally, it would probably be limited to printers that are in that specific network, at least to start. I know there are ways that we could um, work around that too. But I think to start, the idea is that it'll either be local storage or cloud storage, and then we can look at more complicated options later. What about overall print farm capability? I.e., you have N number of parts needed to be printed in X material, but only have Y number of printers set for that material. This can allow the farm to adjust number of machines loaded with a certain material to adjust time to needed to print that load. Okay, that's a really good point because I don't think it's on here.
well, that's more enterprise level, I think.
Yeah,
Like
there's
that
like
gets into the smart dynamic queue
it would be like
fast bit dispatch.
yeah, it would be like you would get an order fulfillment estimate. You would get that. And so that would be based on your current capacity to print the parts that you ordered. So in the case where you might not have enough printers in black PLA, but you have like 100 parts that you need to print in that, you'll see that the order fulfillment time is really, really long, and that there's only one printer that's capable of fulfilling those orders.
I think Pat's actually got a good point here in terms of in terms of printing and reliance on the internet.
Yes. Okay, this is actually a good point that we
Yeah.
should bring up. Um, because this is important for us too. I mean, we know that network issues are a huge problem, and we don't want that your farm to be basically like, what is that called? Like a linchpin or something, where we don't want your farm to go down if your network goes down.
Yeah, exactly.
So the way everything's being designed right now is to run on local hardware as much as possible. That means storing files on local hardware as much as possible. Um, the only thing that really should go down if your internet were to go down would be your ability to access the printers remotely um, from like an outside network. Because obviously, if you don't have an internet connection, how are you gonna access it remotely?
Yeah.
But
Well, and I think to Pat's concern is the digital warehouse. How do you deal with an internet disruption when you have that kind of structure, which I know we've talked about. So uh,
Oh, I mean,
I think to clarify that is important. I think that's where the question's coming from.
yeah, I mean, like if you don't have internet access, you'll lose remote access, but everything else should be running as locally as possible. Like even now, uh, like even with the way we've set up Quinly is if if you did have multiple network together and they were to lose connection from one another, they'll still finish the print jobs that were assigned to them.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's not going to like interrupt you in the middle of a job.
That's why I like to call it a warehouse.
Hmm.
It's literally like, okay, you take things from the warehouse and you get it out to your printer network.
Yeah.
If your access to a warehouse is cut off, then you can't get more from the warehouse. But that doesn't do anything to your printer network. I think, Pat, that's what you were asking about, because you were asking about the central.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, so that I think hopefully that answers this question. But it's basically things will be stored locally as much as possible, um, because of network reliability is something that's really difficult to rely on and can be really annoying if it does go down. Because it's usually if a network goes down, it's completely out of your control to fix it, and so we don't want printers going down due to a network outage.
Yeah. And over time, not right now, but over time, obviously there will be, redundancies built in. And that also is why, for instance, you might want a Pi on every printer.
Yes.
More storage. You don't have multiple printers relying on a single device.
Yeah.
So
Could Quinly Pro not work with its own ad hoc network within the site network? This is how some IP cameras are done in a network hub. It can be run on the same Pi Rock64. Yes, so actually, last month we started shipping wireless hubs using antennas that support ad hoc networking.
exactly.
So with that express purpose, we've actually stopped purchasing the other type of antenna. All hubs going out now have the capability to make an ad hoc network with this in mind. So if you do already have hubs and we're looking to build a farm, just let me know and we can
Get you some antennas.
provide you some of these new antennas.
Yeah.
But exactly, I'm glad Al guessed that, because that is a very technical point, but it is an important point, because so many people have issues with network connection. We were like, okay, let's just make our own, because this is much more simple, it's more controlled, and we don't rely on something external.
Well, when I was over on the island during the pandemic, cause close to my parents, where I was, you lost electricity like on a regular, to the point where it was just, people would just sit in the dark at the coffee shop because it was just normal. And
That's crazy.
and they'd wait and see if it lasted very long, because it just goes down all the time.
Right.
You don't want to be, dependent on a
No,
network
no.
under those circumstances.
Yeah, that's so.
I mean, that's electricity, but I mean, your internet can do the same thing, right? So,
Yeah, lots of places around the world don't have consistent.
well, Pat's saying he loses it all the time,
Yeah.
and we certainly know people in certain areas. In fact, I think I was actually talking to Pat one time. We were even having problems just with Google Meets. Finally got on the phone. I think it was Pat. It was somebody I was talking to. We finally went, forget it, just get on the phone, because
You can't.
the internet was too unstable. So yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, so we are considering, like, with every one of these features, there's always fallbacks and fallbacks and fallbacks. Like, yeah, with like I mentioned earlier, with the fingerprinting the printers, because there's no way to do it officially, like we have 3 fallback methods to make sure that we can recognize your printer correctly. And it's the same thing with most of these features. Like, it is being able to support any printer is a really difficult challenge. And so whenever we design something, we always make sure that it will work on each printer that we support. And yeah, that takes a lot of work, but it also means that you end up with a really, really robust system once you do get all the little edge cases worked out. Um, so yeah, so this this is very important to us when we're designing something that networks your machines together.
Yeah. And that's what I say about over time, that's just going to get more and more robust.
Yeah, yeah. There's like on the beta, we just want to get it to work reliably, and then you can start layering other stuff on top of that.
Yeah.
Um, okay, and then actually, I guess on the point of remote access, Pro will come with remote access. If it's connected to the internet, you can remote into it anywhere. It's like a secure tunnel. We talked about it in a lot more detail on one of the previous streams.
Yeah.
And also with that comes auto updates, which people who are in the Multihub beta have already experienced, and it seems to be working pretty well. Except the Pro beta is pretty cool because we found a way to update everything on the device without ever needing to reflash. So we can do, yeah, like kernel updates and boring stuff like that. But you'll never have to reflash. It's good for us. It's good for you because you'll never have to reflash.
Yay.
Yeah. So that's cool. Saves a lot of time too. And with Pro, because updating a print farm is a big operation, we're looking at being able to schedule updates like in between prints or stagger updates across the farm so that you can take small pieces of it offline to update rather than having to do the entire thing at once. Oh, the other thing that we should mention, so kind of as coming out of Multihub is the idea of moving away from the Pi and the Rock.
Yeah.
So the idea is we started with Multihub, we started working on a Dockerized version of Quinly, and we plan to carry that through to Pro, so that with Pro you'll be able to run Quinly on basically anything that can run Docker, which is basically anything.
Yeah.
So yeah,
exactly.
Everything. Yeah, including an Android phone if you want. For some reason, people like to do that. So that'll be an option.
Anything you have handy.
Yeah, literally.
We've all got old chips sitting around on something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then of course Multi-Printer Hub will be part of going into Pro as well. And then finally, I guess one of the really interesting pieces is like plugins and API. So with Pro, we're thinking about setting up plugins that let you connect to Shopify or Etsy and then import your order book directly into some place within Quinly, either maybe directly queuing items or making them like draft orders or something so that you can review it and set it up and immediately send it to the queue without having to like manually look at Shopify and then look at Quinly and decide how you're going to do that. Those orders will be right in there, and then over time, building ways of connecting certain products to certain G code. I think that will be like a really interesting use case. And again, that just saves a lot of time running your operation.
Oh yeah, and once you've got that API ability, people with ideas will go, I want to do this, and it's like great to go for it. I mean it's crazy what different people will come up with that because of their specific circumstance, you don't think about. That's been the really interesting thing with Quinly even. That we have found so many more I was going to say use cases, but just combinations and permutations of everything than we could have
Yeah.
imagined. And we thought we had a pretty robust idea when we started, but
Yeah, there's like people want to connect it to other stuff, and
auto population of the queue. Al is like,
yeah, that is
yes.
truly going to be like the future when your inventory just prints itself basically.
Yeah, exactly.
I
Yeah.
think the automatic printing will be like the very experimental. Be careful.
Yeah, be careful what you ask for. I mean, one of the things that we've been talking about for a long time, Al, is because Richard, when he was here, was doing his master's in parametric design. We were talking about people literally using the parametric design program and it going directly through
Yeah,
an
to
order
get printed.
platform and onto your printer, and then people will get completely unique objects straight from the internet, so to speak.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's endless. Actually, we should ping Richard and say that Pro is opening because he might do an API with his
Yeah, he
parametric
might
design
connect it.
generator. Yeah,
Yeah.
because he's already got that on the web. So
Yeah, exactly. There's actually one of the other farms that has started looking into parametric design where like they print custom name tags for Etsy,
okay.
and I know he automated part of the STL generation process. So
Oh, that makes sense.
yeah, when I think
Especially when you have a set number of characters.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
There's only a certain amount of characters, and also I think what he has is it's like mostly automated. He can enter their name and it will generate the STL for him.
Nice.
And I feel like it wouldn't be too much of a leap to then slice it and throw it into the queue, and then yeah, I don't know what you do after that point. Nothing. Design more products.
I don't know. Maybe. I mean, that's the thing. It's going to be interesting to see what people are doing, and we only hear this much of what people are doing every
Yeah.
time people we haven't talked to in a year suddenly have a question, or they're wondering about the next thing we're doing or whatever, or they contact us and then we find out they've been doing these crazy things that we had no idea. It's kind of cool. Yeah.
I should mention Al's comment, auto population with tags. So that's the other thing is
Yeah.
when you have lots of printers, you have to be able to filter jobs to certain printers. So there will be some kind of filtering system,
Absolutely.
material, printer type, job, nozzle. I won't say there's some other stuff that we're looking at too. It's called printing money, basically. Yeah.
Al, you put filament in one end and money comes out the other.
Hopefully. Yeah.
That's
what
what
we're
we
aiming
want.
for.
That's what we're aiming for.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's a new business model.
Yeah, because I think a lot of people who want to use printers for their business do not want to be messing around so much with the printers.
No, I had another good one the other day from somebody I was talking to, somebody who hasn't used Quinly before, real fan of Prusa, and he said, if people just want to play around with their printers, that's fine. I just want to run my business.
Yeah.
And I think that's true.
It is. Yeah, there's so much time lost. I'm looking forward to this because we'll actually be able to quantify all of those things.
Yeah, exactly. So we can maybe get into Bitcoin.
Oh God.
Print coin.
Print coin. Yeah. We'll send you nonsense things to print to earn coins.
To earn coin. Mm.
I mean, yeah, that's like maybe a long time down the road. You just send people, doesn't even have to be orders coming from your store. It could be an order coming from someone else's store.
And they make a commission. What the
Yeah.
heck?
Yeah,
Hey, we do that now with Henry.
pretty much. Yeah.
Print this off for a customer in the UK, Henry.
Yeah.
We need someone to do that for us in Germany.
Yeah, shipping to Germany is insane.
Yeah, in Australia. Oh, so expensive. So when the Australians watch the replay, somebody's going to contact us and say, I'll print your stuff here.
Yeah, hopefully.
Because they know the shipping to Australia is crazy.
It's ridiculous.
It's ridiculous.
And you shouldn't have to ship. If everyone has a machine that can make the same thing, then set them up with a machine and make it there on site.
Yeah. Well, Robert's all over that, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so I think that's our kind of an overview of where the beta is going, and roughly in that order. I mean, starting with getting everything working together and being able to ID all the printers, and then moving on to kind of the central file and queuing, and then on to really what we want is everybody to get to use the software before we really nail in the UI.
Yeah.
So the UI is not going to be the prettiest, but we're going to get feedback from everybody in terms of what was handy, what's useful, where should things be, and then really dig into the analytics, which is the part that I'm interested in. So, and I know I said on the Discord, if people are interested in doing some stuff around business analytics, to let me know, and I will post again. I think this is actually a good time because we'll have data that people can work with.
Yeah.
A problem is, everybody's working with different data. It's very hard to, you're not talking the same language because everybody's got
people keep
different,
track of different stuff.
Yeah. Well, they're using different printers. They do different things. I mean,
yeah.
But if we can get some consistency in the reporting, and we're going to need to do that for the analytics anyway.
Yeah.
Find out what do people need, what reports do they want, and prioritize. Everything takes time to program.
Mm-hmm.
So, we just have to have an order, stepwise process.
So good thing you asked, Pat. Is this a soonish thing? This is very soon. We're at the part where we talk about the roadmap. So the first call, the kickoff call, is going to be next Thursday or Friday. Did we decide?
We said Friday.
Friday. Okay.
Yes.
Next Friday.
Yes.
The 13th.
Friday the 13th. That's why I was asking like several times. Are you sure? No. Yeah. So 10 a.m. and
5 p.m. PST.
PST.
Yeah. So yeah, next Friday we'll be doing the initial call where everyone who's registered can join. And then we'll be starting with remote access testing. Yeah. We'll be doing more testing on auto updates because it's different when you're sending it to many devices. And we'll be testing remote file storage, like central file storage, and we'll also be testing central queue. Those are the first things that we'll be testing after that kickoff call. And then what kind of happens is multi-printer beta ends up merging into this beta because it will be done and its features get rolled into these features as well, and then we build on top together. So the multi-printer beta and the pro beta end up merging about 2 weeks in, and then after that we'll be doing basically a lot of UI work. Yeah.
And I think Pat might have been asking about the use case for international shipping. I'm not sure whether his question was related to that one, because in terms of being able to internationally coordinate, I mean, we can do it already, but the part of the point with Pro is that you could automate it. If you had relationships, for instance, Henry's in the UK, so now if you have Pro, you can put him on your farm, so to speak, and if there's a UK order, over it goes, and that is our ideal world, and definitely where we want to go.
Distributed manufacturing or distributed farm under your account, you could send it to machines that are physically in a different location.
Yeah, and we're just, I'm sure like everyone who's on the stream, just so sick of the shipping issues right now. It's just like we just want to move on. And actually, to that point, something we may not have talked about very much, we are starting to redesign some of the kits to get rid of the extrusion. Aluminum, obviously, big issue now. So watch out for that. And increasingly, we're finding with farms, a lot of people want to tilt their own shelves. So changing our tilt systems too.
Mm-hmm. 100% elimination of international shipping, not just automating international shipping.
Yeah.
I could send it to someone who has a print farm instead of a single printer in their bedroom. Yeah, I think anyone that's like running Quinly Pro. Well, I guess the interesting thing would be that you would have stats about how well they're printing things.
And it's better than reviews because you can't really fake the stats.
No, you can't. You really can't.
If it gets 5 stars, Quinly gives it 5 stars. Yeah. No, and that's the point, because there are people who have only a couple of printers, maybe, but do exceptionally good work. Like, I wouldn't have any problem sending something to Steven's printer.
Yeah.
I think he only has 1. You have 1 or 2, Steven? I can't remember.
He has 3 now.
Oh, is he good?
Yeah.
He has no room for him anymore.
They're
then.
like,
the printers are gonna just take over his
They're
house.
I know he keeps them like under the stairs in the basement or something.
Perfect.
But yeah, so maybe that's an idea where you could use their hard stats to evaluate, like, is this a print farm I want to send something to?
Right.
That's really far down the road though. That's like,
yeah. That's out there.
That's out there.
But okay, so Pat was asking about Pro Beta. So yeah, next Friday, Pat, if you want to go to the shop, do we have a link?
There's a link in the description.
Right.
So yeah.
And
I guess I should show it.
Yes. And the just so you know, just simply you need to order the quantity of printers you want to hook up for the Pro Beta. Super cheap. It's $10 a printer for the first month. So, you get on the Pro Beta and immediately, of course, we're going to work on that individual printer ID and just getting everything integrated and go from there.
Yeah.
Should go pretty quickly.
Yeah. This starts when the beta starts. And yeah, I guess this is like a special pre-purchase price too. So I don't know what happens if people buy like more than 1 month worth. Then I guess
we'll honor it.
Get it at a discounted rate.
We didn't put any brakes on it.
Sure.
You guys want to buy a bunch of units to use later? It's sure. I'm not gonna say anything.
Okay.
Jack wants to buy his 1,000,000 units.
Right.
He can go ahead.
Right. Yeah, the idea being that because you won't have 100% of the features right away, there's going to be a discounted rate as features are introduced.
And we'll give you an idea as we go forward which ones are going to be added and when, and how we're going to deal with features. That's one of the things you're going to have a lot of say in the beta too, is how we ultimately end up charging for features. As you all know, there's a million ways that software gets charged, because people use it so differently. So we're going to be working on that. So, and then incorporation of things like Quinly Vision. I see Pat's adding in Quinly Vision. Exactly. I mean, Pat, that's really important too. If you're working with somebody else who's not in your organization, or even in your organization, but somewhere remote, the ability to have Quinly Vision watching and tracking how many fails, what are the first layers like? Are you getting zits? Are you, what's the defect rate? Not just failure rate, but defect rate, right? Because you want good quality product. This is where the whole thing starts coming together as a really robust manufacturing system.
Yeah.
So.
And just so people know, like this beta will be a bit of a longer beta, given that there's so many features being added. Like The multi-printer hub beta is one, just one item out of the 9 that are here. And there's actually more stuff that's not even listed on this page.
That was just what I could remember off the top of my head.
Yeah, pretty much. I know, it's crazy.
There's a lot of things. If you guys ever got a look at our software features backlog, you'd go crazy.
The worst part is it's not even fully up to date.
No, I know.
It doesn't have a lot of, well, it has this stuff, but it doesn't have like
a lot of the stuff we want to do.
It's really out of date.
It is, but so.
I just paid for a group of 5.
Nice. Thank you.
Thanks, Sal. Yeah, looking forward to starting this. Multi-hub won't work alone any longer. The multi-hub will still work up until the end of the beta. So you can, yeah. We're finishing the multi-hub beta too. They'll run alongside one another for a while and then they'll get merged into Pro.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much.
Oh, and we should talk about as we move into Pro what we're doing with our products.
Sure.
Just so people kind of get a bit of a heads up, because we are going to go with a basic product and a Pro product. But you guys who are already on any Quinlys you have now, if for some of you, I know you don't have like a whole farm, so you will have what we're sort of internally calling Quinly Basic Plus. So any of the features that you've accumulated because you've been involved in betas and that type of thing, you get to keep. Because you were instrumental in putting it together. So doesn't mean you'd have like a full Pro, but anything that goes on the basic would, the basic as it stands now would end up carrying forward with you. So you're not going to lose features as we go forward.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Basically.
Like you won't lose multi-hub features.
No.
No.
There's stuff. Yeah. Basically, get to keep stuff that you helped with.
Absolutely. Part of the reason we want to be able to track.
Yes.
To know who's doing
what.
Who do we have to keep things going to, because over time we can't do it manually, we can't figure out. So if Quinly knows, then you just keep getting the basic plus and then
yeah, that I think that's fair, because yeah, you guys help develop this stuff, and so you can keep it going forward.
Yeah.
What if I already have machines in 2 different locations? Can I link the different locations together for automation? Yeah, that's the idea with Pro. You'll be able to do that. And then you could tag the printers differently so that you don't accidentally send like a part halfway across the world. Yeah.
Or you can have them interchangeable if that works. If you don't care whether it's in your workshop or your office, then you have the choice. We're trying to make it as flexible as possible.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing we're doing with Quinly Vision, really offering a lot of flexibility. So Quinly Vision, to start with, will be able to already can recognize 14 failure types, and you'll be able to pick a different response for each one, depending, of course, on your printer, because if your printer doesn't have a pause function, we can't pause it. But if you want to, for instance, if you have a spaghetti and it persists for long enough that you've got some certainty, maybe a couple minutes or 3 minutes, and you just go cancel, forget it. And then you get that custom response every time. And so we're trying to do that with all of the software, is make it as interactive as possible and as much like you as possible.
Yeah.
So what would you do? You get to choose.
And some people run their farms with no cameras, so they might not need Quinly Vision, but they might need Quinly Pro, stuff like that. Or vice versa. Maybe they don't have that many printers, but they want to monitor their printers. So we're trying to make everything really modular. So yeah, you're using the features that you need, and not using the features you don't need.
Exactly.
And I'm pretty sure everyone who's going to beta test are going to be advocating for the features they want first. So
That's what I said. We need to have an auction.
yeah, we need to have.
Yeah, we're gonna have to figure out how to prioritize, obviously.
Yeah. That's what those calls next week will be for on Friday.
Yep. And also, shameless plug here, tell lots of people to, get Quinly and get Quinly Pro, because the more people we have, the more devs we can hire, the faster we can get features done.
That's true.
I mean, it's
Yeah.
literally a man hour, human hour, girl hour, whatever, power hour equation.
Yeah.
It's the more people we have on the system and the faster we can develop.
Yeah.
So
it's like very correlated.
Very highly correlated. Kevin, any thoughts? Yes, soon. We are, Kevin's asking about Quinly Vision. When would it go on to Kickstarter? Very soon. We are, we have been adding so much and training. It's kind of crazy what Quinly Vision can already do.
Yeah.
But, surprisingly, if you guys might appreciate this, it's actually really hard for us to get failures
Right.
to put up onto the Kickstarter page, because you have to specially film everything and you need to show the different failures. And that's what I was saying today. We had this print that we were printing to fail, and it failed to fail.
Yeah.
So
like,
now
failed in the way we didn't want it to.
Yes, it didn't work for the marketing. So anyway, so it's coming. But Quinly Vision itself is doing quite nicely. And it'll be interesting because I think from what you were saying, Mateo, we're going to be able to let people stream a limited number, like a couple of people at a time maybe, but stream into a portal and try it out. Right?
Yeah, that's what we're trying to set up, at least for some types of failure, because
it's just learning. It's still, very young AI, but
they're actually on the Kickstarter page when it goes up. There'll be an interesting comparison between where it was in January and where it is now.
Yeah.
So that'll be cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll try to have a live demo as well that you can like hook up a webcam to or something. Yeah. Still have to figure out how we're gonna do that.
Yeah. It's
Can't have like 1,000 people streaming to it at once.
No, I was saying we almost need a schedule where you say, hey, I want to try a bunch of failures for this hour or something, and then stream in. It's because there's just having everybody stream in at the same time would be crazy.
Kevin says he's wondering about those Pi cams that are Cam that he posted in Discord, if they could get a cost break to you. I think the price they have on there is pretty good. Like it's $35 for a 64 megapixel camera. That's like
not bad.
That's a pretty good deal, and it has autofocus too.
Did it?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't.
Which is
that
huge.
Closely.
That's a big, like with printers, this stuff is always moving.
Exactly.
I think that's a good deal already. I don't know if they're gonna give us a price break, but it might be worth asking them, like as an add-on item. Or maybe as a stretch goal or something.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's all there is to say with Quinly Vision right now. I got a night vision camera to test stuff with, but I just got it yesterday.
Yeah, I'm really interested to see that.
Yeah.
And I want to see how those pictures that Matea set up for you are going to work. She did some blurry and some really dark.
The dark one that I did, actually, it works really well.
No, really? I thought that one was going to be too dark.
No,
oh my
it's
gosh.
I'll show you guys.
So I haven't even seen this one yet. But I am amazed at what Quinly Vision has.
Sorry, I just need to log in.
You do need to log in. Get that LastPass working. So Yeah, I think it's going to be pretty interesting with the Pro and the Quinly Vision will also dovetail because we'll be starting that Quinly Vision beta um, fairly soon as well. But they're very compatible, I think, from my perspective.
Yeah. Okay.
So
No one's seen this before.
this is brand new. Drum roll, Stephen.
So this is the like normal brightness, detecting a lot of bad first layers and stringing.
Stringing and port. Yep. Okay.
And then this one was one that we just made it really dark.
Yeah. Mateo just literally no way.
It almost gets as much.
That's crazy. That's crazy.
Well, it's like because it boosts the brightness and contrast back.
Sure. I mean, that's the nice thing with video and photography is
Yeah, you can do that.
you can do that, and you're doing it at a sub-pixel level. And I guess a lot of you guys don't know the details around that, but Mateo is working with the sub-pixel technology. So literally, I think it's 3 sub-pixels per pixel that it's detecting changes at. And so detecting change at that level, it can see far more than us,
Yeah.
you know.
You can do things with like upscaling the image, and you can do things where it's not actually looking at like the pixel, but looking at how a pixel might look over time. So stuff that like it might not change to a completely different color, but it might fluctuate color over time. But yeah, it's pretty good result.
Oh, what was it? It even picked up a pink. What was the little?
The warping.
That's warping.
I don't know if that's correct though. Let's see. Oh yeah,
kind of. It is a
it's
little
like
bit
coming off.
Yeah, that's interesting. So, yeah, so we're pretty excited about Quinly Vision because it's not just, I mean, the failure recognition is great, but from my perspective, defect detection, when you start getting into quality control, quality assurance, having some basis for the AI to be learning in that direction that's really exciting. Again, for profitability and reduce waste and the defect detection itself. I mean the failure detection itself. Obviously, you save money because the faster you can catch fails. It's the fail fast, fail forward, only a different meaning. But the faster you can catch them, the faster you can get onto your next prints, and the less filament you waste, and the less of your time you waste, and the less risk to your printer.
So QV will be a part of Pro. Yeah, the Pro will have functionality that works specifically with QV. So like how you can track canceled jobs or yield rate for a job, you could also start tracking failure types per job. So it'll open like a lot more analytics than was previously possible. Same way you could do printers get certain types of failures more often rather than do they just fail in some way or another.
Well, it's the specificity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they'll be like they'll connect to one another if you need it. But Quinly Vision will also be available completely standalone as well.
Yeah. So people can have both. And part of the reason, we don't have Quinly for every printer yet. So those people who have other printers that maybe we are not compatible with it at this point, you can throw your Quinly Vision on your Raise or your Dremel or your
whatever
Stratasys,
yeah,
or your Desktop Metal BMD.
If they allow you to open it.
If they'll let you put a camera on it.
Yeah.
I don't know. They must have cameras inside already.
I would think so.
I would think so.
Anyway. QC is way more important for me. I may have 1 in 50 or 1 in 100 that actually fail. Yeah, it's like even stuff like this, like a lot of these, like let's say for example, this one in the top right, like the first quality or the quality of the first layer is not good, but that part is still probably going to print and stick to the bed. But it's going to have a defective initial layer, and you don't really want that. So that's why stuff like this is important, even if here you have some that are failing, but a lot of these wouldn't actually fail, and you just end up with a part that you can't really use.
Exactly. And Al's saying it's either filament or machine hardware, so he wants to know which it is so he can fix it quickly. But also, Al, over time, you want to know if it's one thing or the other that's consistently failing, so you can maybe prevent it, right? Get in there a bit sooner.
Yeah.
So it doesn't fail.
Yeah, and QB would be able to tell you that, to a certain extent. Here's the types of fails it's getting, and this is what. Oh, I guess we didn't even. That's a separate thing, but there within Quinly Vision there will be a print fixing guide built right into it, written by. Are we
Sean.
saying it?
Yeah. Oh yeah, Sean agreed. I have the
Okay,
I have the text. He was like, yes, all good.
Okay, so 3D Print General has a book about fixing print fails.
A 333-page book.
It's a long book, and it's really detailed.
Yes.
And we'll be integrating parts of that book right into Quinly Vision. So when it detects a problem, you'll have the resources to fix that problem right there. And it'll be at the correct chapter and give you the correct information too.
Yeah. And he even has some information from Nicholas from Polymaker on material science, which might be super interesting for people if they're having a chronic problem with some sort of filament. Reading through that might give you, I'm seeing why that's causing me a problem. So that book is just chock full of things, like literally 333 pages, and almost every couple of pages is a new topic. It's crazy.
There's so many chapters.
Yeah. And Pat's saying, he only needs to print one thing on certain printers, so Pro doesn't do a lot of good. The interesting thing, Pat, that I would find fascinating is and I get, dedicating printers to a particular item, but if you have, say, 3 printers that are all printing the same item, would Pro make them more efficient by reallocating? Or maybe they're printing 2 items and reallocating them. I don't know. I always get curious about scheduling and how efficient you can get your scheduling.
Because I know in our farm there's 3 printers that we use to print a couple of certain objects. Those printers have 0.4 nozzles, and we have a few parts that use 0.4, but we don't print anything else on them.
But having the queue automatically allocate in the order in which the orders come in or which we need, I think we would lower inventory levels because it would be more efficient in terms of, you actually need 2 of these today and 8 of those versus 4 tomorrow and 3 of those or whatever it is. So.
Yeah, it would be interesting to see maybe during the beta.
Yeah, it would be very interesting.
Cool. Okay.
So, and historical data, absolutely.
Yeah, historical data, and then historical Quinly Vision data is, a whole nother level of being able to diagnose issues.
Yeah.
This was actually one of the first things that it did because there was no quantity.
That's true.
Modifier. Or maybe we just need to reintroduce that.
The infinite
quantity.
The infinite quantity. We actually, because with QPod, we had infinite quantity.
Yeah, but it was because we didn't have quantity.
That's right.
So it would just loop it forever.
It was literally looping. Yeah, exactly. Actually, we might as well.
I don't think it's that hard to do.
We had talked about actually having once we get into, so this is the next level scheduling, but so many per week. So it's infinite, but from a farm perspective, it's infinite in the sense of needing a certain amount a week.
Yeah.
Which could mean that you're reallocating if you are, printing things of different print times and stuff. That it might be more effective if you have to have 500 of a particular part every week. So it's infinite, rather than having it on 2 or 3 printers, that it's allocating it amongst 8 which are then getting optimized.
Yeah.
That'll be really interesting to see.
Yeah, doing it per week instead of for quantities would be interesting. On those printers that only do one item, what about being able to shift the print's bed location so it doesn't wear out a spot in the bed? The vapor surface should not wear out. So if it does wear out a spot in the bed, we'll send you a replacement.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be wearing out, even if you print like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of things.
You'll get the ghosting.
Sometimes.
Sometimes.
Yeah. It'll discolor sometimes.
But it shouldn't wear.
Oh yeah, okay. We just answered Pat's question.
Yeah. So literally, Pat, the bed shouldn't wear out.
Yeah, if it does, then we're shipping you a replacement one.
Yeah.
We had one actually, like a really old bed that we recently replaced, but that is like a formulation we don't use anymore.
No. And that's something else that we don't ever talk about. Mateo has been modifying the formulation and dialing it in more and more for Quinly. One of the challenges with our beds, because I know people are always asking for second beds and replacement beds, and I think we're getting close to the point where we can start offering it to our Quinly users. But one of the challenges for us is we have been honing in the formulation to just get it more and more precise. And the data that we're collecting really helps with that.
Yeah. Like, I guess, for example, when we started making them, only about 30% would pass quality control.
Yeah,
now,
I remember those.
Yeah, now it's like our last batch that we produced was something like 98% passed. And we still test every single bed before we ship it. We actually print across the whole surface.
Yeah.
To make sure that there's no like weird adhesive spots or anything. But yeah, it was like 1 and 2 and 3 would be failed, and then now it's more like 1 in 100 fail.
Yeah, exactly. So Henry's asking about tracking filament based off extrusion.
That's something we're looking at. We found a way of calculating it more precisely. The reason it's not included now is because none of the methods for calculating print time or extrusion amount that I found are very accurate.
No.
But I recently found one that is pretty good, that actually simulates the printer, and I think we might start using that one. Because yeah, like if we were to give time and weight stats that were off by 30%, it's like worse than useless.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Yeah, yes, and then also part of that would be if there's not enough filament left on a spool, it wouldn't send the job to that printer.
Yeah, that's part of the smart dynamic dispatch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You mean like length or weight that is always on the spool? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Henry probably does have like one of the first ones.
Yeah. Well, in terms of volume, I mean, you have ones that are way older because his is only 3 years. But
I mean, I have all the failed ones.
You have all the failed ones from the original formulation.
Yeah.
But in terms of the newer formulation, for sure, I think you do, Henry.
Yeah.
And Henry was actually asking me about printing temps on the old bed. I said he should ping you and
they're
and
roughly the same. They're roughly the same.
So, Pat, I think you're really optimistic about how long your MK3 is going to last.
Yeah, that printer's not going to last that long. Well,
maybe
it'll go like 3 generations. It's like an MK6 before the bed breaks.
Exactly. Who knows? That's funny.
Yeah, the part that's difficult is like loading the spool, because if you have a half finished spool, how much filament is on there? That's a part that gets really difficult, and then if you can't do that, then you lose track of things really quickly.
Well, and that's where it gets more to an enterprise level of calculation if you've got a lot of machines. I mean, I think Stephen said it's the postman's dilemma, when, which you can do on a couple of machines without really fancy algorithms. But when you've got a lot of machines with a lot of different configurations, that becomes a whole level of programming that I think, yeah.
I think Al actually suggested like using a load cell to calculate the weight of the spool. Might be there. There's a way to do it with that, but then you need additional hardware, and so it's like, who makes that additional hardware? Do we provide it, or do we work with an OEM to have that?
Yeah, and we don't, if we can get away from adding more hardware, we'd like to.
Yeah.
So Pat, the fellow I was talking to last week, who has the 70 printers, he actually has one K3 because he's a huge fan of Prussia's, and he said he has 25,000 hours on one of his, and he just swears by them.
What is that? That's like a year and a half or 2 years.
Oh no, I don't even know. Well, no, he must be 25,000 hours. He must have meant 2,500 hours, I think. No, 25. That doesn't make any sense, actually. Now that I think about it, he must be talking about a group of his printers.
Yeah, because that would be like 10 years.
It would be 10 years, yeah. Well, yeah.
10 years.
No, 8,000. You have about 8,000.
Oh wait, hold on. I did it wrong.
Yeah, you're doing human hours.
It's 6,000 a year. So he can't have had a printer for 5 years.
You did 24 by 265. Why?
Oh, whoops.
I was gonna say, no, we know it's. Yeah,
8,000.
Remember, Cupa, 8760 times 9.
So 3 years?
Yeah. Oh yeah. So I guess 25,000 in 3 years. Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Has it?
MK3's been around for 3 years. He said it was. He said that's according to the logs. So.
Yeah. So it must have been like he must have had it for 4 or 5 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's crazy. Can be used with a filament sensor to track filament usage. You could track when it runs out. I don't know how you would track like the actual amount used, because if, let's say you use like 3/4 of a spool and then you took it off and then you put it back on, how would you tell the printer like, oh, there's 225 grams left or something like that? That's a tricky part that would have to be figured out.
Yeah.
That is, maybe you're not switching spools until they're out, then it would work really well.
Well, I'm surprised that there isn't a way to use the actual printing data. You know how often your nozzle is putting material down.
You can calculate how much is being used, but it's like, if I then move that spool to another printer,
oh, that's
how do I track that?
Oh,
yeah, that's where it breaks down. That's where everything breaks down. If I don't move spools, then you'd be able to do it pretty accurately. But if you move spools,
well, then you'd have to have an identifier on your spool.
Yeah, you need to do what Ultimaker does.
Yeah.
Which we looked at, but from what I understand, not that many people use Ultimaker's NFC chip, because they have a chip that will track spools and track usage. Even a smart filament sensor only reports whether filament is moving, not the rate or amount. Yeah, they don't track feed rates. There's some that I think, no, not really. The palette tracks feed rate, but that's a completely different thing.
Yeah.
A $600 filament sensor, basically, if you were to use that.
But I can see that over time, once you've got the processing power, then maybe you can start calculating. But these are next level calculations, I think. Because maybe even the AI can get smart enough to estimate. I don't know.
Yeah, it's not that the estimation is the issue. It's just that you lose track of filament spools if they move.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm trying to figure out. How would you track the spools?
You would have to manually like say, oh, I moved this spool to this other machine, or I took this spool out of inventory that was half used, and
you'd have to have an inventory tracking system for your spools. Yeah, and
that
who's
gets
going to
really
do that?
complicated.
Well, you don't have to do it if you have 15K spools.
You don't have to do it, yeah. Or if you always use your spool to the end, you would never have to do it.
Yeah, exactly.
So it would work in that case, but
that's true.
Yeah, but that's like I don't like that solution because it's so easy to break. As soon as you switch spools, it's broken. Like you can't recover from it. it won't be able to track that spool anymore that you removed.
No.
I don't know. Mark the length. Yeah, you'd have to like write it on the side. Especially if you do color changes or if you reuse spools you did like an RFID chip.
Yeah.
I think Prusa says they are putting these chips in their spools, but even still, it's like you would have to only use RFID compatible spools, and you would need a reader. And yeah, it gets really complicated. I think, yeah, I would be curious to hear ideas because this is definitely would be really helpful to prevent like half printed parts
for sure
from happening. Yeah, but that's like a discussion for later. That is super in the
a
weeds.
third camera that it's just trained. The AI is just trained on the spool.
This is literally what Pat just said. That's so crazy.
There you go. Pat, psychic.
I'm pretty sure Max suggested that at one point too, where he was like, "Oh, what if we could watch the spool to see how empty it was?"
Well, why wouldn't we be able to? Because it was, QV was already detecting chords as spaghetti. There's no reason that we couldn't say this is the thickness of film.
This looks like the same spool.
1.75. Well, it would be able to detect the thickness of spool at that last layer. So as you get down to the last layer, you would have, say, a section of the spool that's empty, and
I guess you'd be able to know, like, oh, it's running out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It might even be able to gauge from the center.
Like
I don't know. It'd be interesting.
Pre-run out sensor.
Empty is pretty easy to spot. Well, Pat, we have no extrusion already on Quinly Vision, so that we can do. We can alert you as soon as it runs out of filament. But we would love to be able to do it just before that happens. Maybe we just need the time lag like we have here. No.
Oh, yeah.
With the stream.
Reverse it really quick. Yeah, like no extrusion we can detect, but
yeah,
that's too late usually.
Where's our no extrusion? What happened to it?
I didn't put it up here.
Oh.
I find it better.
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
There.
There, it's detecting it not extruding.
So it's like a little bit too late.
Yeah. I was watching some online printing today, and they could have used this. They were only not extruding for a minute or two, and they obviously replaced it. But I was like, oh, they need Quinly Vision.
Yeah, they did. Yeah. Yeah, maybe something. Just have to watch something. Yeah, I guess we could watch the spool, but then it's like, do you get people to put their spool in the shot? How does that work?
Well, that's what I'm just saying. It's a third camera.
No.
I mean, third camera's not that much, as long as you could run 3 off your Pi.
It could be like a really bad camera too.
Like 420 or something.
But even worse, it need to be like 60 pixels wide. Like literally wouldn't have to look at it.
Pinhole camera, make it yourself. Hook it up to Quinly.
How soon does it detect it though? Soon enough to save the print? Not yet, but I think we can get there. Like this one is a pretty good example of how quickly it detects it. Like it can detect it during travel moves to the point at which like we have to filter travel moves out of the detection. But you can see it's only detecting it when it's not over the
and it's almost instantaneous if you watch. I don't know how fast Mateo can click it as soon as the box comes up, but it's like, whoa, it's like way, that nozzle is just barely off the edge when it's already flagging it. So
I think, yeah, as soon as
there's pretty fast
gap between the side.
Honestly, I think the issue with Quinly Vision, and I've been looking at this as I've been writing up the text for the Kickstarter and stuff, or thinking about this, is the issue is going to be how fast can you get the notification, not how fast can Quinly Vision find the issue. Quinly Vision finds it fast. It's like, how fast will the email or text or, or internet relay be? I think that's where that's where the challenge is going to be. It's not going to be in the AI itself. It's very fast. Mateo and I were actually looking at that, exactly trying to do slow-mo and calculate how long it was taking. And we couldn't believe how fast it was. It was under a second, and even with video, trying to
Yeah, it's
figure
like
out
one frame, basically.
it's a frame, yeah, and you're 30 frames per second, so yeah.
Yeah. It's not actually, it's interesting though. Sometimes it like seems to get that it's going back to the other part of the print. This is old model too. This is not the newest one. So we'll see how it changes. If you already had 4 printers on a hub with multi-cams each, the overhead would be astronomical. So part of what we're kind of doing with the Kickstarter is really funding the actual implementation of this. So like we have a model that works, but it has to be implemented in a way that you can run it on something like a Pi.
Yeah.
And we have all sorts of ways of optimizing it to run on lower spec hardware, like reducing the overhead by hundreds or thousands of times than processing HD video. But that's a lot of work and a lot of testing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, guess
Yeah,
we're way off topic.
We're way off topic, but that's the fun of having the live streams.
That's true.
Because if we pre-recorded, we'd never talk about any of this stuff.
Yeah. Okay.
So I think that's it for the beta.
Yeah.
Mark your calendars. You'll be getting an email tomorrow with the times.
Yes.
So you can either tell us you want to be in the morning or in the evening. We still haven't quite fixed the Google Meets thing, so you're just going to have to tell me so I can put you on. So I'm figuring out a way to automate that because we don't do enough of them to spend the time researching it. But it'll be 10 a.m. or 5 p.m. Pacific time. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. So trying to make it easy for Europe and the East and Australia. Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Yeah. So that'll be fun. That'll be, of course, interactive, and it is Google Meet, so we get to actually chat back and forth, get some ideas, and get people up and going. And thanks everybody. I noticed I got some notices from the shop. Some people have already bought their betas, which is awesome. So we can, and it's great if you guys can get it ahead of time because we can then load everything up into the software and get you onto the mailing list and everything. It's just if we can do it ahead of time, this makes streamlines our workload. And that's great. Yeah, so I think it was good.
This is
good
exciting.
Stream. We're very excited.
Everyone here is excited for Pro.
Yeah. Stephen's silently excited.
Stephen is asleep probably. I haven't seen him in chat.
I hope he is actually.
Docker is the answer to everything. Yes.
Yes.
It is.
Woo.
Okay. We'll see you all next week.
We will see you all next. We are going to have a live stream on Wednesday and also the onboarding for the beta on Friday.
Friday.
So we'll see everybody on Wednesday and then again on Friday.
All right. Goodbye, everyone. Goodbye.
Bye. Bye.